Everyone thinks the Lenovo LOQ with a Ryzen 7 and RTX 4060 is the budget gaming holy grail, the no-brainer pick you should just slam in your cart and check out. Stop. That is exactly how you overpay for the wrong laptop. Because after testing this thing hard for 2 weeks gaming, editing, thermals, battery, the whole deal, I realized there is one brutal flaw that makes a lot of people regret buying it, and a couple of hidden strengths that almost no one talks about. So no, you should not buy the Lenovo LOQ Ryzen 7 7435HS RTX 4060 until you know what you are actually getting into. Before we dive into what I discovered, quick heads up. If you are already half sold on this and just want the best current price, I left my affiliate link down in the description. But seriously, stick around, because a tiny detail in the spec sheet is the difference between a killer deal and a huge disappointment. So here is why I even picked this thing up. My old gaming laptop was basically a jet engine with a 60Hz washed-out panel. Competitive shooters felt laggy, editing 4K footage in Premiere was a stutterfest, and every session ended with hot palms and a dead battery. I wanted something that could crush 1080p gaming, handle content creation on the side, but not cost as much as a high-end Legion or ROG. On paper, the LOQ looked perfect. Ryzen 7 7435HS, 8 cores, 16 threads, RTX 4060 with up to around 115 watts, 16 gigs of DDR5, fast SSD, and that clean, no RGB gamer bro look. But I have been burned by budget gaming laptops before. Thermal throttling, trash displays, soldered RAM, fake TGP marketing. So I went in skeptical and decided to treat this like a real-world stress test, not a honeymoon. First thing I did was hammer it with games. 1080p, high settings, performance mode, laptop plugged in. In Cyberpunk 2077 at high with DLSS quality, I was floating in the 70 to 80 FPS range. Pretty solid for a so-called budget machine. Apex Legends and Warzone were hitting in the 120 to 150 FPS zone on high, and Valorant easily went over 250 FPS with settings tuned down for competitive play. That RTX 4060 is no joke once you let it pull decent wattage, but then the fans kicked in. Under heavy load, this thing gets loud. Not unreasonably loud for a gaming laptop, but if you are coming from an ultrabook, be ready. Performance mode means headphones mode. Next, temps. I ran a combined CPU and GPU stress test for about 30 minutes. The Ryzen 7 7435HS mostly sat in the mid-80s Celsius, with occasional spikes into the low 90s before the fans ramped and it settled. The GPU hovered in the mid-70s to low 80s, so thermals are aggressive but controlled. You do feel some warmth above the keyboard, but the WASD area stayed comfortable enough for long sessions. No immediate thermal throttling disaster, but then battery life entered the chat. In light use, YouTube, browsing, notes, some Spotify with the screen at around 60% brightness, I squeezed maybe 4 to 5 hours out of the 60-ish WH battery. Push it with gaming and you are looking at an hour, maybe a bit more, and performance drops hard on battery anyway. So if you dreamed of unplugging and gaming at full blast on the couch for an evening, that is not happening here. But here is where it gets interesting. The screen. There are different panel options on LOQ models, and this is the trap. The cheaper configs ship with a 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz IPS panel that only covers around 45% NTSC, roughly 60% sRGB. Translation. Colors look flat and a bit washed out, blacks are more gray, and if you care about photo or video editing, it is a problem. Motion is smooth thanks to 144Hz, but the image just does not pop. There are versions with better color coverage, closer to full sRGB and even 165Hz in some regions, and those completely change the experience. Same laptop, totally different perception. I also tested it for productivity and editing. In Premiere Pro, 1080p timelines were buttery smooth, and light 4K footage with some basic color correction and transitions was very usable. That 8-core Ryzen does solid work, even though it is not the absolute latest Zen 4 chip. Multitasking with 20 tabs, Discord, Spotify, and a game updating in the background. No sweat as long as you have at least 16 GB of RAM. The good news: on most LOQ models, the RAM and SSD are upgradable. You can open it up, add another stick of DDR5, drop in a larger NVMe SSD, and you are set for a few years. But again, there is a catch: the build. It is mostly plastic, around 2.4 kilos, and it feels fine. Not premium, not flimsy, just obviously budget. The keyboard is actually pretty nice. Decent travel, good spacing, white or 4-zone RGB backlight depending on configuration. The trackpad is okay, but nothing to brag about. Ports are solid though. HDMI 2.1, USB-C with DisplayPort, Ethernet, multiple USB-A ports, and they are mostly on the back, which keeps cables out of your way. But if you are expecting Legion 5 build quality at LOQ prices, manage your expectations. Here is the big revelation after all that testing. The Lenovo LOQ Ryzen 7 7435HS RTX 4060 is an absolute performance beast for the price, but only if you do not cheap out on the wrong configuration. I put in hours of gaming benchmarks, editing workloads, and thermal stress tests, and from a raw performance per dollar standpoint, it can absolutely beat a lot of entry-level Acer Nitro, HP Victus, and even some older Legion and TUF models. The 4060 at decent wattage plus that 8-core Ryzen gives you 1080p high settings for years. But if you grab the version with the low color gamut panel and minimal RAM or storage, just because it is on sale, you are locking yourself into a washed-out visual experience and immediate upgrade headaches. That is why so many people end up saying it feels underwhelming. The laptop is capable, the configuration is the real villain. Once you compare it to alternatives at a similar price, you realize. Others might give you a nicer panel but weaker GPU, or better battery but no 4060. The LOQ is basically a performance-first machine that sacrifices elegance and screen quality on the cheaper trims. Now that you know the trade-offs and the exact trap to avoid, here is the move. Check the link in the description for the current best-priced configurations, and make sure you are getting the 16 GB RAM, decent SSD, and the better display option if it is available in your region. Prices jump around, so if you see the right config discounted, grab it before it vanishes. Bottom line: you should not buy the Lenovo LOQ Ryzen 7 7435HS RTX 4060 blindly. If you are a competitive gamer or a student who mostly plays plugged in, wants maximum frames per dollar, and does not care if the chassis is a bit chunky and the cheaper screen is just okay, this thing is a sleeper powerhouse. If you care a lot about color accuracy, want all-day battery, or need a premium-feeling machine for travel and meetings, look at a Legion series or something like a Zephyrus instead. The LOQ is not the perfect gaming laptop. It is the brutally honest one: performance first, polish later. And as long as you buy it for what it really is, not the marketing fantasy, it might just be the smartest bad idea you ever make.